Good evening, everyone. Hope you had a nice holiday.
כבוד הרב, שבוע טוב. How are
Thank
you?
you. Baruch Hashem. Okay. Okay. So just give me 1 second. Okay. Yeah, it looks like we're going to tech. So it says here in the tour, צריך להיזהר כששופך מים הראשונים שלא ישאיר על ידו צרור או כיסם. Interesting. Okay, right. So it says when you're pouring the first time on your hand, make sure there's no foreign object on your hand, like a twig. So we'll see the whole thing in the tour. Let's just check the whole text there. Right. So it says here, או שום דבר שהיה בתוך המים, or something which was in the water also, some foreign object. שאין השניים מטהרין אלא מים שעל היד. So he says, why? Because the second pouring only purifies the water which is on the hands. ולא המים שעל הצרור, but not the water which is on the twig. Whoa. ומי שיש לו מכה בידו, okay, that seems to be something else. So let's look at the Bet Yosef. This is very interesting. So says Bet Yosef regarding this, he brings a source. Ken katav Rosh, he brings it from the Rosh, Beperek Kol Basar. Where is this in the Gemara over there? The Rosh on the Gemara. Ve'adin hazeh Mishnah Beperek Bet Mesechet Yadayim. So it's Mishnah, he says in Yadayim, second chapter. Natalet Rishonim. It says over there, if you wash the first time, V'nimtzet al yado kisam, and you had a twig, right, or a pebble on your hands, yadab tameot. So your hands are impure. She'ena mayim achronim mitarim ela mayim she'al gabi hayad. Why is that? Because the second pouring only purifies water which is on the hand, and not foreign objects. Okay. Pirush Sham Rosh, the Rosh explains there, v'nimtza al yadav kisam otzror. So if you have on your hands, a twig or a pebble, even though it's loose, and the water did go in there, so there's no interposition. That's not the issue. Nevertheless, his hands are impure. Because what happens is that the water which is on the pebble becomes impure because of his hands. So he says, but the second pouring only purifies water which is on the hand. So therefore, the water which is on the twig or the pebble, it remains impure. Wow. Then it comes back and makes the hand impure. So what do you see from here, right? Something very interesting. That you have to make sure when you're washing your hands, when you're pouring the first time, there should be no foreign object on the hand. Because otherwise, you're not going to be able to do the job. So if you do have stuff like that on your hand, you got to first remove it, and then start your washing. Okay. Just to explain the theory behind this, what's the theory? The theory is that the second pouring does not have the power to purify the water which is on the foreign object. Only the water which is on the hands. Why is that? You ask me? You know why? Because that's what the rabbis made it like that. Otherwise, I don't know. I have no other answer to give you. You know what I mean? That's the only thing I can tell you. So that's the way they made it, and therefore, you got to follow the rules. So that's it. Umash katav Rosh, and that which the Rosh said, v'gam Rabbeinu, o shum davar shehu betoch hamayim, right? Also, they added another element, right, which is some foreign object which is in the water itself. So it says it might be coming to include things like, aquatic little, microscopic, things there, which are in the water. Very, very tiny little things. It's not really microscopic, right? I'm exaggerating. They're small, right? They're tiny. That's what it means, right? So, if it's microscopic, that means the naked eye can't see it. That wouldn't be a problem. So we're talking about something which the naked eye can actually see. But nevertheless, right, that's what we have. So Okay, interesting. So that's going to be also a problem. This comes to exclude, he says, opinion of the Rashbag. The Rashbag says that whatever is like in the water, in other words, it's found in the water, it's like the weight that the water is, that's not a problem. But he says in the second parak of Zvachim, and it implies halachas like him. Like I wrote in chapter 160. So he says, therefore, you have to say, he only wrote this to include other things, which are not from the creation of the water. Now, they're not the part of the scheme of the water, right? Whatever, the natural state. Okay, so that's very interesting. So just to recap, right? What are we saying? We don't want any foreign matter on your hands, or also not in the water as well. For the same reason, right? The same concept there. So anyway, that's interesting. Right. Okay, so that was the end of that. Now we're going to the next piece in the tour. There's another piece here, which is very short. So I'll just read it off a little bit here. We'll come back to this bit, Yosef, then. So so like this, right? So this is something very common, right? That people have some kind of a wound on the hand, some kind of a cut, and they have a dressing on it or whatever, all kinds of stuff like that. Says the Rosh, so he says, you know what, you can just wash the rest of the hand, which is outside of the dressing. Even though we say the second parak of Gittin, and you can't really wash your hands, part by part. So then how could you do that? Leave a piece out. That means that he's not able to wash half the hand. And then the second half. That's only if he does half and half. But here he can't really wash the other part. That's the problem, right? He's being forced not to wash that. So it's not considered to be like you're doing half. Why is that? Because it's not possible any other way. So he says it resembles like somebody who lost his finger, right? His finger was amputated. He's going to wash only the other part of the hand, right? Obviously, he's not going to wash something he doesn't have. So meaning what? Then since there's no choice, he washes whatever is left over in his hand, right? The part they didn't lose. So same thing over here, since he has a wound there, he's got a cut, right? Whatever it is, he can't wash there, so therefore he's got to, avoid that place. Okay, interesting. But he says you got to be careful, that the water shouldn't touch the dressing. Why is that? Because if that water comes back on the hand, it will, right, defile the hand. Oh my God. Or the other solution is, right, as we already mentioned before, you spill like a revi'it, in one shot, and this way, right, Now you don't have any problems like that. ואז לא נטמעו המים. And then the water will not become impure if you do that. Okay, great. So that's the end of this tour. Let's go back to the Bet Yosef and finish it off. So it says Bet Yosef regarding that. So it says Bet Yosef like this. That what your tour said. That if somebody has a dressing, right, or a wound there, that if he pours a revi'it of water as in one shot, his hands will not become impure. So you see from there that a person who spills pours one revi'it of water in one shot. So you don't have to be careful anymore. So they said also you don't have to be careful regarding the issue of the twig and the pebble either. Oh. Kol shem refu'im, as long as it's loose. Why is that? Because if it's loose, the water gets in. Right? So therefore you don't have a problem with the interposition. So he says, Rambam explains this Mishnah, the nimtzet al yado kisam, that he has a pebble or twig in his hand, mishum chatzitza. He says, according to him, the problem is not what we mentioned here. The problem is interposition, that it doesn't allow the water to get in and cover that piece of the hand. שכל דבר חוצץ בתפילה, חוצץ בנטילה, ידיים, הוא נכלל. Right, so he says, and therefore he didn't mention this because it's included in whatever's written regarding immersion, right? Same concept over there. So whatever you see there, you have to also apply it here. So that's what he's telling you, right? That's therefore he didn't feel a need to write it. Just so you're relying on what you have over there. Anyway, the point is that so we have a machloket here between the Rambam and the first opinion we saw, which was the Rosh there. According to the Rosh, on the tour, right, the problem here with the twig and with the pebble is not because of interposition, that it doesn't allow the water to get in. The problem is because of the impurity, right, that comes from there, as we already mentioned, right, which is, by the way, it's kind of like, it's a little hard to swallow, the differentiation that they make between the impurity of the water, which is on the hand, and the impurity of the water, which is on the twig. It's a little hard to swallow that, so maybe I'm not so surprised the Rambam doesn't explain that way. He explains that the problem is interposition. Okay, interesting anyway. So we'll see how the Shulchan Aruch goes, right? What he says about this. So, therefore, according to the first opinion, right? Just to reiterate what we mentioned, according to the first opinion, if you pour a revi'it, that should solve the problem, because then you won't have the issue of the impurity. But according to the second opinion, which is the Rambam, it's not going to help you because it's still going to be interposition, even if you do revi'it. Okay. All right. So yeah, let's go to Shulchan Aruch. Let's see how he decides this one. So says Shulchan Aruch, "Kisheshofech mayim yeshanim al yadav," when he pours the first pouring on the hand, tzarich lizaher shelo yishaer al yadot tzror o kisam. As we said, right, you got to be careful. Don't have any pebble there or twig on your hand, or shum davar acher, or anything else for that matter, right? It's all the same. She'en mayim mitarin ela mayim asher gavayad. So this is why, because the water only purifies the second pouring only purifies whatever you have on the hand, the water which you have. But not the water which is on the pebble. So he says, if he pours, right, one every eat, so you didn't have to be careful about that. So you see, right, that doesn't pass like the Rambam here, passes like the Rosh. That's very clear. So now, right, just a side question, but important also. Why did he paskin here like the Rosh and not like the Rambam? What's the reason for that? There must be a reason. So I'm going to go back here to the Bet Yosef a little bit and see what I can dig up to answer that question. Yeah, I don't really see any compelling reason why, except for one thing, that probably he found the opinion of the Rosh over here the more accurate one, according to the Talmudic right, discourse. That yeah, that's the only thing I can think of over here. It just fits in better to the Talmudic right narrative. Okay, interesting. Very nice. Okay, so I guess we'll go to Yud, unless you have any questions. Okay. Yeah, so we already did this one in the tour, but let me just make sure in the tour we read everything. Right, so he adds one more detail here, the tour, which is that when you wash your hands for a meal, that water, right, where should it drain into or pour into? So he says it could be a vessel, it could be also into the ground. Doesn't really matter. So why is he telling you this? Because you may think, that since the water is impure or whatever, so there's some kind of danger there involved. Just like when we talk about water in the morning. In the morning, we always say, if you remember, we learned this earlier on, when we started, that when you're washing your hands in the morning, that water, should not be sitting around after you use it for washing because of the ruach ra, the impure spirit, the bad spirit which is on the water, and that bad spirit, can do harm to people. So therefore, you should not have it around. So let it, like drain out, drain, down the the pipe or whatever, or let it drain, or let it, right, wash away, with a slope, right, with something like that, But here we don't say that, so we're not so worried about the impurity over here of the water. That's not really a big issue. That's what the tour says over here. Okay, we'll see. We'll see if there's a Shulchan Aruch on that as well. But anyway, before we get to that, we have another tour. So we have another Beit Yosef, which we already mentioned, which is Tet Yud. Yeah. So what we said was that according to the Rosh, he said that if there's a wound or dressing on the hand, right, just avoid that part, and you can wash the rest. It's not a problem. So regarding that, says Bet Yosef, Per Kol Basar, right? Where is this in Kol Basar, which is in Churin? V'zeh leshono, this language over there. V'afagav de'aminan Perek Bet Gitin. Even if we say with that in the second Perek Bet Gitin, Tet Vav Amud Bet, then yadayim teorot chatzayin, that you cannot purify the hands by halves. Hanamile de mashed palga v'hadar mashed yidach palga. That's when you wash one half and then you wash the other half. The kia gavna lo mikre netila, because it's not called washing like that. It's like half and half. But here, as we said, since he can't wash the other half because there's dressing there, whatever it is. Lo mikre netila. So there it's not called washing by halves because there's no other way. So it's considered like somebody who, has lost his finger, as we said, who washes whatever he has. מפה לאוכלי טהרות. Oh, that they didn't permit a mapa, is like a tablecloth, whatever, handkerchief, that for people who eat pure. Kol sheken lechulin greded de lo zahir v'ate leminga. Oh, okay. So yeah, this is something that we mentioned before, if you remember, right? We in passing we mentioned that what happens if a person doesn't have any water? He wants to eat bread. So what does he do? So we said, right, you can put on gloves, right? This way you're not touching the bread with your hands. So here also saying the same thing, that you can use like a handkerchief, to wrap your hand and eat like that. But he says, you know what? When it comes to people who eat impurity, they didn't allow that. All the more so, he says, when it comes to mundane, that they're going to come to, touch the food. So he says, but here it's different. Why? Because there's no concern that maybe he'll touch the food, besaro, with his skin, which is under the dressing. He doesn't remove it because of the pain, right, of the wound. Omnam tzarich lizaher shelo yagiu hamayim l'retiah. But he says you have to be careful that the water should not reach the shouldn't touch the water which is on the dressing. Shelo yachazru hamayim shel haretiyah. So then what's going to happen is that water on the dressing is going to come back v'tam'u et hayad and right make the hand impure. Like this thing we brought above, the issue of the twig and the pebble. Or you can pour right one revi'it on the hand, right? As we said, right, that's going to be enough to keep them away from the impurity. The house don't need to be on mine because this way the water will not become impure. Okay, that's that. And then we get to the last piece, right? We just read a couple of minutes ago. We said, right, that you can wash into a vessel or on the ground. Braita perkab kol basar. Where is this also? Kol basar, which is in Chulin, Kuf Amud Aleph. Klamar ve'lo damu l'mayim achronim. Oh, so he says it doesn't resemble the water what you do after the meal, right? Mayim achronim. Shenam nitanim al gabi hakaf. You cannot do that on the ground. So what's the reason why you can't do it on the ground? Also the same thing, over there, because there's some kind of impurity there. Right, we're gonna talk about that later on when we get to that issue. But anyway, right, until that point, this is the reason that you can do it when you're washing to eat, but not after you eat. Not the same thing. Okay, so let's see Shulchan Aruch, and we're done with this chapter. So it says the Shulchan Aruch like this: Mishesh lo maka biado. Person who has a wound, as we said, right, on his hand, or retiah, or right, which is the dressing, right? Alea dailo, right? So yeah, so in other words, the way he says it over here is that there's a wound and then there's a dressing on top of it, right? That's the way they do things. So today, people put more like they put the band-aids on. But in those days, they didn't have band-aids. They did have bandages, but they put dressing, which is like ointment, that we use today, like stuff like that. Same idea. So anyway, it says regarding that scenario, Dailo Sheitol Sharayad. So this is an important halakha, by the way, because this happens very often. I think we spoke about this already, A person has like a band-aid on his hands, or he's got, a cast, right? All kinds of stuff like that. Right? So what do you do? So what you do is you wash everywhere else, besides that place, because, that place is not possible to wash. That's what we're saying over here. Right. So he says also, another thing is, don't touch that dressing, right? That ointment, whatever. Because this way the water could come back on the hand and defile the hand. So, right, so here also, right, we say that if you spill it every eat, if you pour it out every eat the first time, you're fine. So you see, right, again and again, we see the same thing, which is that, pouring out every eat really saves you from a lot of problems, that you could potentially come up with these issues. So therefore, try to pour the first time, Arevi, eat. Do yourself a favor, right? And then all these problems, most of them they disappear. That's a good thing. So, that's what we tell people, right? Don't be cheap, like pour out the water, generously, right? Don't pour drops out, little drop. Do it like a man, you know what I mean? Come on. Be serious about it. Don't worry, there's enough water
You
left
said to
over.
a classroom full of women.
I'm sorry.
You said do it like a man to a classroom full of women.
Yeah, I know it's very chauvinistic, whatever.
It's not chauvinistic. I just think it's ironic.
Yeah, I know. You're right, but you know what I'm saying, right? So you get the point, whatever. Every today, everything has to be, politically correct, whatever. So whatever it is. Anyway, right, so that's the way it goes. So yeah, be generous, like don't be frugal when it comes to washing hands. As we said, right? It's also a good sign for you, for good, for wealth and all kinds of good things, So why be so frugal, Drop. Don't say drop. Go be generous with it, whatever, right? Be liberal, as they say, right? That's a dangerous word today, right? Liberal. Pour liberally. But don't vote for the liberal. That's something else. I'm not talking about that. Pour liberally, but don't vote liberally. Next week we're voting, So that's how it goes. Okay. So okay, good. So let's go on a little bit. So says the here in the end, the small print here, Rama, whatever it is. נוטלים מים ראשונים בין בכלי וגם בקרקע, right? He brings this little piece we saw in the end, right? Which is that, you can put this water into a vessel or on the ground. Doesn't really matter. So, yeah, so we're not really so strict with that. Because even though there is some sort of impurity going on here, whatever, as we said, but it's not a strong kind of impurity, which can be dangerous, whatever. So we're not really concerned about it. Okay, that's it. We're done with this chapter. So we can go on. We still have some time. Let's see what we have ahead of us here. So this Shulchan Aruch we're gonna delete because we're done with the chapter. So now we're going to Kuf Samech Gimel. We're almost done with the washing of the hands. Yeah, these are important topics, Mm. Then we're gonna get into more, blessings and stuff, which is really an important topic, And honestly, like when it comes to the laws of blessings, most people don't know these rules very well. Don't tell anybody I told you. Even many rabbis don't know these rules very well. So, it's a rare thing somebody really knows the laws of blessings. There was one big Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Shaul, who was a chavruta of my rabbi Maran, Rabbi. So he used to, when they were younger, they were chavruta. So he used to say, right, that the laws of blessings are one of the hardest topics in the Talmud. He says, I don't know exactly why he says that, but whatever. They can be quite intricate, the laws of blessings. So what can I tell you? When we get there, we'll see why that is. Hopefully. Okay. Anyway, let's get back to our next chapter here. I remember, when I was in the yeshiva there in the kollel in Yerushalayim, there was one big rabbi there, who was like the posek of the yeshiva. That's what they used to call him. He was the one who all the questions came to him. Whatever, something like that, of the whole institution there. Whatever. So I remember, one time we sat together in the lunchroom, and we were eating, and I see, that he was the type of guy who doesn't like to eat bread, for lunch. So you know why that is? Because he doesn't want to take too much time, to wash his hands and right to say Birkat Hamazon. He wants to go back to learning, whatever. He's too busy for that. So, so okay, whatever. That's a whole discussion in itself, but I'm not going to get into that now. But anyway, right? I would sit down with him and eat with him. He was a very nice guy, very sweet man, great personality, and I would see him, he would like, as I said, he wouldn't eat bread, so he has like, a main dish, right? And, then he has a side dish, right? Some, I don't know, whatever, his mashed potato, French fries, and then he's got his salad, right? The whole thing, the whole setup, right? And, like he would bless on even, the minor stuff, like the salad, and the pickles even, whatever. So, like I could see, that was a big mistake what he was doing because you're not supposed to bless on those things. So I would tell him, like, but he didn't understand what I was talking about, Don't. So, like, even a person like him, he doesn't, he didn't know the laws of blessings very well. Also, we spoke about these things, some other issues and blessings, and I caught him, like he was very unknowledgeable about this, like how is it this guy, doesn't know the laws of blessings, a lot of people don't know about these things, it's one of those things, it's like an underrated topic. Okay. Anyway, getting back to what we said, right? Because they're too busy, trying to be Dayanim, they want to be Dayan. Oh, but knowing the basic laws, of blessings, they don't want to spend too much time on that. You know why? Because the Dayanim, they get paid, it's a good salary, so everybody goes for that. Okay. Anyway, right, we'll go to the next chapter here. Yeah. This is the Bet Yosef, so let's look at the Torah. So yeah, this is a pretty short one apparently. So it says like this, right? Give a pot, right? So it says, right, that you're not allowed to eat without washing your hands, right? So don't think, oh, I'll get away with it, Don't try to get away with it. Just wash, like be a normal person, don't try to play games. Don't try to get around it. People are always lazy about two things, washing their hands and doing Birkat Hamazon, which is the same thing, really, right? The same process. Hey, why are you so lazy? Birkat Hamazon. Oh my God, it'll take me 5 minutes. That's the end of the world for me. Like what happened to you? You can't bless God for 5 minutes? Bothers you so much? I got things to do. I'm busy. Come on. You're so busy. What that you're that busy? What is it with you? So that's what he's saying over here. Make sure you wash your hands. You're not allowed to eat without that. So what are we talking about? We're talking about bread, obviously, right? We're not talking about eating, what do you call it, French fries, right? You have to wash your hands for French fries. So anyway, right? So even if he says if you want to, wrap your hands, right, with a, as we said, right, with a handkerchief or something, put some gloves on, right? Don't do that, don't say, yeah, I'll just put gloves and I won't wash my hands. So the truth is, as we already mentioned here and there, that if a person has no water, he is allowed to do that, but that's only if he has no water. But here he's talking about a case where he does have water, but he wants to, put gloves on anyway. I mean, just to be cool, whatever, right? No, you're not allowed to do that. You can only use that glove method if you got no other choice. That's what it is. Okay, so we're gonna see that a little bit more at length, right? So let's go to Bit Yosef. Let's see what he says about that. So it says Maran, he brings a source for this, right? Perek Kol HaBasar. Where is this? Also in Chulin, right? Kuf Zayin Amud Bet. Asikna deitiru mapa leochle truma, velo itiru mapa leochle tarot, umperesh Rashi, itiru mapa leochle truma, diakonim zrizim hen. Oh, so he says, right, that when it comes to eating truma, they allowed you to wear gloves. You don't, use a handkerchief, right? Hanky. You can use your hanky, but right? So they allowed that. Why? Because who eats truma? The Kohanim, right? And the Kohanim, they're very particular. They're very strict. So because of that, they won't come to touch it, without the handkerchief. But not for the people who eat their mundane foods with purity. Because they're not so particular and careful about the Kohanim are, like the Kohanim are. So as I already wrote that the Rosh writes over there that somebody who has a wound, right, as we said, dressing, right, right, so they didn't, as we said, right, they don't allow a handkerchief when it comes to eating purity. All the more so if it's just regular mundane food. The law zahir, because people are not careful. So therefore they're going to come to touch it. In other words, if you allow them to eat with a handkerchief, the problem is they're going to eat also without the handkerchief. They'll come to touch it. You know how it is, right? People are not so careful. You allow one thing, then you get the other thing, right? You have to draw the line somewhere, to protect the danger, whatever. כתב רבנו יונה בסוף פרק דברים, right, that's what it says רבנו יונה, וכן כדת סמ"ג, also סמ"ג וסמ"ג, אבל הרמב"ם כתב בפרק ו' מהלכות ברכות, but the Rambam says, לת אדם ידע במפה ואוכל בהם פת. But the Rambam says not like that, right? He says, no, you can do that, right? You can wrap your hands and eat bread. So the Rambam does allow it. Right, interesting. Also something which is dipped into liquid. So it seems to be like he says that they only had the problem with this when people are eating mundane foods with purity. But when it comes to just regular mundane, we don't say that. Because since it only requires washing the hands because of the you may come to eat truma, so they didn't decree more than truma. Right, so therefore he says when it comes to laws of blessings, which is talking about eating mundane foods, so therefore the Rambam did allow to eat with a handkerchief, right? So the Rambam allows this lechatchila, right? Apparently, to do this, right? Interesting. Oh, so we'll see right here. Also, we have a machloket here. כתב לת אדם מפה ואוכל תרומה בלא בנטילת ידיים, ואין חושבים שמי גבה. So he says, we're not concerned, the Rambam says, that he's going to touch it. אבל לא יעשה כן לאכולין שנעשו על טהרת קדוש. But don't do this when it comes to things which you eat in purity. או על טהרת תרומה, right? Or גזירה שמי גב, because we're concerned he's going to touch it. לפי שאינו מקפיד עליהם, because he's not so careful. והרעב"ד סובר כדת רבנו יונה, right? So he says the רעב"ד agrees with רבנו יונה, והראש לכן כתב עליו, והרי לא התירו מפה אלא לאוכלי תרומה. So therefore he says, right, they only allow this for תרומה בלבד. So it seems like most of the authorities Rishonim here don't agree with the Rambam here. But Rashi כדת Rambam, but it seems like Rashi agrees with the Rambam. Right, so we do have here מחלוקת, interesting מחלוקת, וערוך כתב בערך גבל הדאמינן ברוך אלו ובנין, פרק אלו ובנין, פרק האור והטב לנטילת ידיים דירת מינין, שאם יש לפניו ברחוק דעת מינין, מים לא יאכל עד שיגיע למים ויטול ידיו, והנה מילי דבעינן דרת מינין לפניו, אבל לאחוריו, אפילו מים אין צריכים אותו לחזור, אלא אוכל בבלי החמתות ולא נטילה, right? Right. So, in other words, just to tell you shortly, what is he saying over here, right? That the Aruch also seems to agree with the Rambam. So we have a big machloket here, basically, right? Between Rambam, Rashi, and Aruch, and we have the Rosh, Ravad, and a couple of other guys on the other side, right? So we got a pretty much even machloket going on. Okay, interesting.
The Aruch, you say?
Aruch.
Agrees?
Aruch.
Oh, okay. Agrees with the Rambam, correct?
Yeah, that's right. So פירוש שלו, התחמתות שלו, ידיו בפעם, ועד ימין אפילו מיל אינו חוזר דייק מגמרא, מיל הוא דאינו חוזר, פחות ממיל חוזר. So, בפרק היה קורא כתב רבנו יונה, דהה דגרסין המפסחים, לקבל פתיחת נטילת ידיים מינין, כך הוא הפירוש שמי שאוכל לחולין טהרה, יש לו ללך אצל מי שיודע שמגבל אותם בטהרה, טהרת מינין. וכן אם ימצא בית הכנסת שמתפללים בעשרה, יש לו ללכת שם ולהאריך דעת מילין, וכן נטילת, right. So he's talking here about, just to recap this whole thing. I read a little bit quickly, but he's saying, right, that there's also an issue about when you're, when you happen to be on the road somewhere and you don't have any water, right? So the question is, what can you do to eat, right? Do you have to now go searching for water, right? So it depends on whether the water is ahead of where you're traveling or it's behind. So if it's ahead, you should go a little bit ahead. But when it's behind you, you don't have to go behind because you're losing time like that. ומשמע דבריו, כשאין מים מצויים לפניו דעת מידין, ולאחריו פחות ממיל, יכול לאכול בלא נטילת ידיים, כלא משום דהווה לה כהולכים במחנה, שנתברר בסימן קנ"ח, שבתורים מנטילת ידיים ולעניין ההלכה נראה. So, yeah, so in other words, he's telling you, right, that there is a rule like this, that we do allow for a person to eat without washing in certain cases, where, he's in a place where there's no water there. He doesn't have to go back, backtrack to where he was before to look for water. Okay, interesting. So he says now the bottom line, right? So he says, it seems to me halachically says that you shouldn't be lenient over here, right? To allow to eat with a handkerchief, right? Or with gloves, right? As we said, right? Since there are several rabbis who argue with the Rambam, but he says if you don't have any water, right, and you have to go now looking for it, right? So then we do allow you. So in other words, we only allow this when there's no water, right? Basically, that's what we're saying, which is exactly what I remembered from my recollection, that we only allow this when there's no choice. So we're going to see, right, what that means. We have to define that a little bit more, because there's also like a time frame over here. How much time are we talking about until you find the water? That's also an issue we're going to discuss, right? We're going to get into that a little bit. But anyway, על ידי שאלת אדם ידיו מפה דווקא הוא דשאלה וכדברי ערוך נראה לי דהכי נקטינן ומה שכתב רבנו. Yeah, so in other words, that's how he Paskins, to be stringent, only if you don't have water. And then, okay, so let's see the Shulchan Aruch, how he paskins, and we'll stop here. I don't want to go too long with you guys. So I'm just curious to see, right, what the language of the Shulchan Aruch is here. We have to bring it up. Kuf Samech Gimel. So let's bring that up, and we'll see exactly what it says. זה שולחן ערוך, אם אין מים מצויים לפניו ברחוק יותר מ-40 מילים, ולאחר מיל ייטול ידיו מבפה ואוכל פת או דבר שיטבול במשקה, right? So he says like this, right, that it depends on the time frame, right? So what is the time frame? You're in a place where you don't have any water, right? And if you have to go backtrack to where you were, in other words, you're traveling, right? You're on the road. So if it'll take you to backtrack 1 mil, right? So what is a mil? This is like 18 minutes. So if it'll take you more than 18 minutes to find the water, then you can use, so what do? Right? Wrap your hands with the handkerchief, right? Or gloves, as we said. This way you won't touch the bread. So that's only if it's going to be 18 minutes. More than that. Which is a meal, right? Which in our, times is like similar to like a kilometer. So it's like half a mile, whatever. Something like that. So now, right, since we're on this topic, by the way, let's analyze the issue of, when you're flying on a plane, right? Can you do this? Can you wrap your hands, or you have to go and wash? Right? So the truth is that, the bathroom was not 18 minutes away. So you see from there, right, that you really should not avail yourself of this on the plane. Of this solution. There may be some circumstances where you can't I don't know, you can't move, you can't get to the aisle, you can't, I don't know. It's sort of extreme, whatever. A person who wants to get up, usually they let him get up, unless there's some kind of a turbulence going on. So if there's turbulence, whatever, it depends on the situation. So you got to gauge that, whatever. But the truth is that probably, according to the simple understanding, you should not avail yourself of this heter on the plane, because we're certainly not talking about 18 minutes. No plane is that big, right? So there you go, right? That's the story. Okay, very good. So I guess we'll stop there. Thanks for coming. Be blessed with wealth and health and happiness. Have a good winter, right? Whatever you want to call it, right? Enjoy your new good winter for you, and Hashem, we'll see you tomorrow. Chazak Baruch Laila Tov, and keep praying for our valiant soldiers who are doing an incredible job. If you don't believe me, take a look at the news, right? They're doing all kinds of good things, all kinds of amazing stuff. It's all miracles, by the way. We're the Jewish people. We're not living in nature. We're above nature a little bit, especially when we're good boys and girls. No chauvinism, right? Sorry. So okay, whatever it is, right? So anyway, Hashem, we'll see you tomorrow. Chazak Baruch, Laila Tov.
Thank you so much.
God bless.